Hello again and welcome to Charles Kelly Money Tips on a beautiful sunny Saturday afternoon here in London, where it's about 24 degrees here, despite the fact that it's already into autumn. So I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Hello to anybody who is on Facebook Live at the moment. Great to have you with me, and I hope that you're all having a great day. And thanks for everyone tuning in on my podcast, which you can find on iTunes, Stitcher and moneytipsdaily.com. Today I want to ask you a question. Do you know who the richest Irish self-made billionaires are? Well, I don't expect you to know. You'd really have to be good at pub quizzes. I didn't know myself. Now, I'll just come on to that in a second. But yesterday we talked about Airbnb, right? We talked about Airbnb growing to a valuation of 30 odd billion and are about to float. And today I want to talk to you about a similar sized company that have only been going about 10 years, and they look like they will be perhaps coming to market soon. Now, if you've ever sold goods online, and most people use PayPal and that sort of thing, but there is a company called Stripe. It's a system called Stripe which takes credit cards online. Now, I'd never heard of them either until I started using ClickFunnels, because they seem to use Stripe. And the people behind Stripe are John and Patrick Collison, who sold their first company when they were just teenagers for 5 million. And now, little over 10 years later, their second startup, Stripe, is valued at $35 billion, making them Ireland's richest entrepreneurs. Fantastic thing there. I mean, a fantastic achievement by them. Now, the latest valuation of their online payment system, which is called Stripe Inc., gives John 29 and Patrick 31 an estimated net worth of 4 billion each. Now notice that the company's worth 31 billion. They are the founders of it, but they get 4 billion each, which means you could call it they've got 8 billion in there themselves. So that's only about a quarter of the company's valuation. Okay, but that's okay because they've got 4 billion, and their share of the pie at 4 billion is bigger than most people share of the pie when they own the whole company. And this comes from Bloomberg's index. They're now on the 500 member ranking of billionaires. There's not that many billionaires in the world, by the way. There's millions of millionaires, but not that many billionaires. Now, did they build up the company organically themselves? Did they use their own money? Did they remortgage their house and go to the bank for it? No, they didn't do it that way. They used other people's money. They're in San Francisco, so they've raised capital from capitalists, from investors, from maybe angel investors in the beginning, maybe venture capitalists, maybe hedge funds who back these tech companies in San Francisco. And San Francisco is pretty good. It's particularly good at coming up with investors for things like Facebook and Airbnb and these sort of companies that, perhaps you'd think, well, how's this going to make money? But they've got this vision where they can put a lot of money into companies and really make a fortune out of it. The guy who put his money into Facebook, I think he lent them 500 million or something like that, or 50 million. He's a multi-billionaire now. Now, on Thursday, Stripe announced that it had raised a further 250 million in its latest funding round. So funding rounds, it's not just a one-off thing of funding. Funding comes in several rounds, and it might be an initial funding round, a second phase funding round. As they expand, they go for more funding rounds. And its latest funding rounds was 250 million, which valued the San Francisco-based company at 35 billion. The only US startups that have higher valuations this year are vaping giant Juul Labs and WeWork, WeCo, which is the parent of WeWork. Now, both those companies are having problems at the moment because there's news out that vaping might be pretty bad for you, and WeWork have postponed an IPO, an initial public offering, on the basis that perhaps there's accounting problems there. So the Irish brothers follow some of their other countrymen: Dennis O'Brien, the telecom tycoon, Dermot Desmond. Their wealth now ranks alongside of people that started Uber, which is Travis Kalanick, and ahead of Airbnb's Brian Chesky. I saw Brian Chesky when I went to the Airbnb convention in Paris. So they're doing pretty well. Now, I often watch these programs like Dragon's Den. I don't know if you've seen them, Dragon's Den or Shark Tank. And, you see entrepreneurs come in and they pitch their ideas nervously to a panel. And the panel then usually ridicules them as that this idea is a load of rubbish. And, what profits have you made? I'm not giving my children's inheritance to you. And they often put down things on the basis that, either they've been done before and the competition's too big, so you can't get into this market on your own. Well, hang on, that's why they're in the Dragon's Den, to try and raise money and get them to help them. And they often dismiss things out of hand and say, well, the perfume market is too big, or the this market or that market is too entrenched for you to get involved, and you'll never get off the ground with this product, so good luck, but I'm out, this sort of stuff. And I often think they need more innovative dragons on these programs. They need people who've perhaps funded companies before without necessarily seeing 5 years accounts and profits, because if they've got that, what do they need the funding for? And I imagine if these brothers, the Collison brothers behind Stripe, had that attitude, they'd never have started the company, because they would have said, oh, we can't get into this market because it's all sewn up by the likes of Visa, MasterCard, PayPal. So what's the point in us starting, because we can never do it? So if you're in a business, remember that your business doesn't have to use an old cliche, reinvent the wheel or come up with some completely new invention. There's not many that new inventions out there, There's a few coming through, but they're always usually a twist on an existing invention. I mean, to give you an example, Apple didn't invent the tablet computer, the iPad that I'm sitting in front of me now. They didn't invent that. Microsoft come up with a tablet computer which flopped a few years earlier. The mouse that is used in many products and in Microsoft and Apple was not invented by them. I think it was invented by Rank Technology. So they take things that have been used before and put a new twist on them. So, you don't have to find the cure for baldness to become a billionaire. The Collison brothers put a twist on things, that they made something better. They made it easier to use, a payment system, and obviously they've done something completely different, but they haven't invented a payment system. They didn't invent credit cards. Amazon was not the first company to sell products online. It won't be the last. Uber was not the first company that had a cab, a rank of taxis, or a cab rank, or a fleet of cars. And I'm sure they won't be the last. So there's already been other companies that have competed against Uber, such as Grab in Asia. Grab have taken over the Asian market. And to give you another, Airbnb was not the first company that had accommodation or offered accommodation on a kind of a rent-to-rent basis. But all of these companies, what they did do is they did it better. They did it faster. They did it cheaper. They did it smoother. They used existing technology, which they didn't even invent, and made it easier to go online and book a room or put your property online with Airbnb. It was just so easy. When I did it, it was just much easier than using other companies I used to advertise with Spare Room, and all they did was put an ad up, and then you had to deal with everything else, the money, the references, and all that, the rest of it. Whereas Airbnb took care of that all for you. Uber made it easy to hail a car, a cab, and not have to come up with cash, and be able to see who the driver is and where the driver is at that moment and how long it would take to get there, and all on your phone. So if you've got an idea, you can use you can use apps that are on Apple to promote your product. You can use eBay, you can use Amazon as a window to sell products online. So there's always a way to start a business. There's always a way to get in business. Maybe you won't be a billionaire, but you can certainly become a millionaire with an idea, perhaps with a twist on it or a new innovation on it. And all the technology is there. We've got in our laptops and iPads and phones, we've got so much technology at our fingertips that often you can start a business very, very easily, very quickly. Within a few hours, you can be up and running and trading. You can have a Stripe account to do your payment. You can have an Amazon shop window, or you can advertise your property on Airbnb, which I think is still free. So you can make money using technology that is already there. You don't have to invent the technology. You don't have to be a computer programmer or a whiz kid or some geek that spends 10 years developing a program. Things are already there for you to use, and the facilities are there. With computers now, we can do so much that we couldn't do before. We can trade stocks and shares online. We can buy gold. We can get real-time information on the markets. We can do our own printing. We can do our own advertising. We can use Facebook to promote and advertise products all over the world to millions and millions of people. And there are so many more examples. I could go on all day about it, but I won't bore you with every example. Anyway, I want to go through the word of the day today, which is flotation. We often talk about when a company is going to float on the market. It doesn't mean it's going to sink or swim. It doesn't mean it's in one of these flotation tanks. No, flotation is, in the company terms, in business terms, it's the process of converting a private limited company or private company into a public company, issuing shares available for the public. It allows companies to obtain financing externally instead of using retained earnings to fund new projects or borrowing money from the bank. So, as you saw with Stripe there, they've raised money through capitalists, but if they go onto the market and float, they will be then selling their shares on the market. Who did this year? Uber. They floated on the market, and they're worth 80 billion. Now they haven't made a profit. So if they'd gone on to Dragon's Den would say, well, you haven't made a profit. I'm not giving my money to you. How can I waste my money on you when you haven't made a profit? They're making losses. They're still making losses, Uber, but they've gone onto the market, they've floated, they've been able to get more investment in by selling the shares and making themselves very wealthy on paper themselves in the process. But they've been able to raise money on the market, which then can help them to expand into things like driverless cars, which are already with us now in Shanghai. They've set out, put driverless cars on the road, which will pick passengers up. So they've been able to raise further funds by floating. And we're planning to do the same thing, but somehow their figures don't add up. And normally what it means is that they're not just floating so they can sell their shares and get out. They're normally floating so that they can expand the company, bring more capital into the business, because when the shares are sold, that money comes back into the company and allows the company to do other things and develop new products and expand. But it's a different way of raising funds from, say, borrowing money from the bank, where you borrow the money and that then it becomes a debt against the company. So that's what a flotation is. Sometimes it's called an IPO or an initial public offering, which is another word I've gone through in the past. But flotation is a standard kind of generic word for that process. And companies can go onto different types of stock markets, for smaller companies, for larger companies, for tech companies. There's all sorts of stock markets all over the world. In fact, one of the biggest flotations that will be happening next year will probably be the Saudi Arabian oil company Aramco, which will be floating for something like $2 trillion. It will make it the biggest company by far in the world. I think Amazon's worth about $1 trillion. So it will be a huge company. But I didn't like the idea that they were forcing some of their Saudi billionaires into putting their money into this business and into this company, which is a different way that we would do things in the West. It shows you what happens when you've got countries that are run by kingdoms or single state parties like China. It's very different from the freedoms we expect in this country, which is why many people from places like China and the Middle East want to get their money out. In fact, many Saudis have had their assets frozen, just like they have in China. They want to get their money out and perhaps get citizenship of another country, usually within a country within the European Union or a safe haven. And I've talked about this before. You can actually get citizenship if you've got money. You know, if you've got a few hundred thousand or a few €100,000 or €1 million, you can more or less buy yourself citizenship in countries like Cyprus, where, you know, it's called a golden visa, in fact. And this golden visa will allow you to get immediate residency for you and your family and extended families, and or maybe a passport very, very, very quickly. And all you have to do is buy a property or a couple of properties in Cyprus, and you're given that fast track golden visa. You don't have to start a business there. You don't have to live there very much. And that would give you a European Union wide passport, the red passport if you like, and give you the ability to travel around Europe, to live in Europe, and perhaps get your money into Europe, where you and your family can be safe. Because I don't believe that in a country which kidnaps people and puts them in a hotel and says you've got to give us money back, otherwise we're not going to let you go, that's not a safe country to live in. Similar in China, if you fall out with the wrong people, you can be put in prison. Similar thing happens to Russian billionaires who've got their money out and come to the UK, and why there are so many Russians living in the UK. But if you haven't got quite that Russian kind of billionaire money, you can get into Cyprus very, very cheaply. And if you'd like more details on that, just drop me a line, charles@charleskelly.net, and I'll show you how to get a golden visa to Cyprus. It's not a working visa, by the way. It's not something where, look, I'm a nurse, I want to work in Cyprus, give me a work permit. This is not a work permit. This is a visa for investors who have a bit of money, usually €500,000, that can put money into a property and then buy themselves a golden visa and a passport in a European Union country. So thanks for listening. This is Charles Kelly bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. Thanks to everyone who tuned in on Facebook, and thanks for my podcast listeners. You can find a transcript of this broadcast usually on Facebook or on my podcast website, which is moneytipsdaily.com. Thanks for listening and have a great weekend, everybody. Bye for now.